When Jesus told us to love one another, he didn't really mean everyone, did he? Welcome to Journey at Home, where we create content that makes it simple for you to follow Jesus. Do me a favor, subscribe to our YouTube channel so more people are going to see this content, and then let's jump into this episode's conversation. We are in what we call our fourth season right now at Journey, where every year we do a special offering. We give as big as we can possibly give, and then we give every single dollar away to fund projects, to help nonprofits, both locally and globally. We are funding projects like food for senior adults, beds for kids, clothes for foster kids. We're providing things like Special Olympics Champions Ball. Every single dollar you give is making a big difference in the lives of people in our communities. And our only goal for this is 100% participation from those of you who call Journey home. So I hope you're going to jump in and be a part of this with us. You can make your gift to the For Fund by going to our app, or you can go to givejourney.com. Just make a gift today, okay? Now, this is the final episode of our series, Be Known for Something Good, where we are exploring what it means to be for as a church, but also we're talking about what for requires of those of us who are Jesus followers, because for is a really powerful word. It is inclusive. It is what Jesus was known for. But while being for others sounds great in concept, for being honest, it's really difficult in application, and here's why. For those of you who are newer around here, for those of you maybe who aren't Jesus followers, there is a rule of life that I have taught here at Journey for 19 years now. It is the only rule we ever talk about. When you think of Christianity, you may think of a lot of commands, you may think of a lot of rules. If that is you, you haven't been presented an accurate version of Christianity, because Jesus replaced all those commands with just one. He made following him really, really simple. You just got to do this one thing. And if you've watched for a while, and you've ever gotten frustrated and thought, oh gosh, there goes Matt again. Why is he talking about that one more time? I wish he'd teach us something new. I've already heard this. Well, it's important for you to know that my goal is not just to teach you information. It's to help you become a pro at application. Because Jesus said maturity is measured by what we do with what he said, not what we know. And none of us have aced this one rule just yet. So I keep talking about it because we haven't perfected it yet. So here it is again. On the night of his arrest, leading to his crucifixion, Jesus looked at his friends, and here's what he told them. A new command I give you, love one another. As I've loved you, so you must love one another. Now, if he just left off that last sentence, I can love others, no big deal, but love others with the kind of love Jesus has shown me, is that even possible to love somebody that way? Or is that just some nice, aspirational, inspirational quote to think about every now and then? Well, before we dismiss it, let's be honest. I actually want you to love me this way. I want everybody to treat me like Jesus treats me. I want you to treat my family this way. I want my kids to marry spouses that love this way. And when you don't love me like Jesus does, I feel like I've been wronged. You shouldn't gossip about me. That's clearly wrong. You shouldn't steal from me. Definitely wrong. You shouldn't hurt me to get what you want. That's wrong. See, I expect this kind of love from you. But loving like this feels like what's asking a bit much, especially when I think about doing that for some of you. See, some of you, don't take this the wrong way, you don't seem all that lovable to me all the time. But I bet I don't seem all that lovable to you either, do I? Matter of fact, some of you aren't even sure loving everyone like that would be a responsible thing to do. So if this makes you uncomfortable, well, you're going to love the latest development with this passage. Some new first century manuscripts of John's account of Jesus' life were recently discovered. And there's actually more to Jesus' command than we've been told. These new documents reveal what Jesus actually said, which was this: a new command I give you, love one another as I've loved you. So you must love one another, except during political seasons, and then you can act and react like everybody else. Now, I haven't been able to verify these new manuscripts are legitimate, but it seems like they have been widely adopted in the church already. And maybe I've got a gift in sarcasm. But I bring this up because it seems like when we're in a political season, Christians, we just give ourselves permission to push aside Jesus' clear command for how we're to love one another, and instead, we dislike and unlike and mistreat one another. So if you're having a hard time loving somebody that you disagree with, maybe somebody you know, or maybe somebody you've never met, well, here's a reminder that we all probably need. Disagreements are almost always fueled by different life experiences, not by low IQ and not by low character. See, you think people who see the world differently than you, they're just not as smart as you, or they don't have good character and morals like you do. But assuming that is not loving others like Jesus loves us. Sizing people up and writing them off is not treating others like we want to be treated. Mature Jesus followers don't go there because Jesus didn't go there. And aren't we all glad he didn't? Jesus disagreed with, think about this, every single person he ever met. There was something about the worldview or way of life of every person on the planet that was out of line with Jesus' design. But Jesus didn't make agreement a prerequisite for relationship. Imagine if Jesus had just stayed in his echo chamber. Well, it would have been a chamber of one. None of us would have made it in. Jesus had every right in the world to look at me and just write me off. But instead, he loved me unconditionally and sacrificially, even when I didn't get it and I was making a mess of it. But in spite of all the differences, Jesus leaned in. He invited me into a relationship with him. He loved me sacrificially and unconditionally in spite of my sin. And let me remind you, he did the same for you, which means we should be able to disagree socially, culturally, or politically and still love unconditionally. We can disagree and still love one another like Jesus loves us. Matter of fact, that kind of love, it should be the distinguishing mark of every Jesus follower in our culture today. Nobody is impressed when we love people who love us. No one's ever said, oh my gosh, Jenny's amazing. She loves all her friends. Tom's incredible. He gets along so well with people who see the world just like he does. No, that's not amazing. It's normal. Which is why Jesus told his followers, if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? In other words, think about the people you have the least amount of respect for. Tax collectors were who that was to a Jewish person in the first century. Even the people you respect the least, don't they love people who love them? Don't they get along with people who get along with them? Jesus went on to say, and if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? So if the only people you're friends with, the only people you welcome, the only people in your circle are people who think, act, and behave just like you, Jesus' point is, how is that special? That's what everybody does. He's going, nope, I want you to amaze people with your love. But that only happens when you love people who are nothing like you. I want you to get outside of your comfort zone. I want you to move in the direction of people who are not like you, even though it may cost you. Because that's what amazing love looks like. And then Jesus upped the ante. He said, but I tell you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. You see, you know you're becoming more like Jesus when you can love people who don't love you. When you love people who wouldn't do good for you. That's what Jesus' love looks like. Now, you know what that means? Well, it means the current season we're living in right now is a huge opportunity for those of us who follow Jesus. Because the more diverse we are, the more disagreements that exist, the harder it is to naturally love. But the better we love in those moments, or the brighter our light shines, the more unique our love is. Every time you give or forgive, you serve, you do good, and you do it for someone who isn't like you, you have just loved them the way Jesus has loved you. After all, let me remind you, Jesus never commanded us to agree with one another. He just commanded us to love one another, because love is the bridge between our differences. It's the bridge between our disagreements. And if we would just get this one command right, we would amaze the people around us with our unconditional love. And we just might bring the light that heals the division we all feel. So, I want to talk for just a moment about what this is going to look like this week. And for those of you who are watching later, I'm going to timestamp this for you, okay? We are 2 days away from the 2024 presidential election. And what I want to remind all of us Jesus followers is this. First of all, by all means, go vote. Vote your Jesus-informed conscience based on the issues. I hope you do that. But remember, as Jesus followers, we do not get to act and react to the results of the election like everybody else. Our command from our leader and our king is to love people on both sides of the election, just like he loves us. So, if your candidate loses this week, I'm sorry, I know that's going to be upsetting for some of you, but remember, Jesus is still in control. Your peace is still found in him, not some political outcome. And your hope is anchored to him, not any political candidate. And you are still responsible to love people who are celebrating their candidate winning. And if your candidate wins, well, good for you. But remember, Jesus is still in control. Your peace is found in him, not some political outcome. Your hope is anchored to him and not any political candidate. And you are still responsible to love people who are upset or afraid or disappointed because their candidate lost. Now, if you're not a Jesus follower, I have no right to tell you what to do. You just react however you think is best. But for those of us who are Jesus followers, I just want to leave you with this question. What does it look like to be for everyone this week? What's it look like to love the other side of the political divide like Jesus has loved us? How would Jesus act and react if he were in your shoes this week? What's it look like to disagree and still love unconditionally? And if you find yourself thinking, but Matt, people on the other side, they're destroying our country. Something's got to be done. They're the enemy. Well, feel free to have kind conversations, respectful conversations around the issues. But let me remind you, you have clear marching orders from Jesus on how to act and react to your enemy. Remember, he said, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. He couldn't have been clearer about how we treat people who we see as enemies. We have no alternative options to choose from. So we get to choose whether we follow Jesus. But let me remind you, we don't get to choose how we act and react once we do. Because we follow our King, and he's given us our marching orders. So we're going to be people who love those not like us, even if it costs us. Because being for people isn't a nice slogan to practice when it's easy. It's our marching orders to follow. It's the best way to shine our light, even when things may seem dark.